Good afternoon. If you guys have been watching what's going on, we're doing our second feed for our Magellanic penguins right now. We have 23 birds in our colony. 13 of them hatched here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. The other birds came to us from other facilities or were rescued in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And that's actually pretty far north from where you typically find these birds. They're found in South America, of course, but in Chile and Argentina. Wally herring. We are individually recording every single fish that these guys eat. So I didn't talk in the beginning because there's a lot going on. There are usually 23 hungry mouths that are really wanting to eat. But this is the second of 3 feeds, so it's kind of like a snack for these guys. Every bird gets a vitamin once, or they get 1 vitamin a day. We sneak it in the opening of the gills of the fish. And the bird I'm trying to feed right now, don't tell her, but she just got her vitamin. So whatever got a Keeper vitamin. Whatever's a pretty smart bird. She's our oldest. She's 17 years old. She's right here right now. And what she likes to do is she kind of likes to examine the fish before she eats it. So the trick with her is if somebody else is eating around her, just kind of sneak the capelin vitamin in there. Because she gets a little bit jealous when the other birds get a chance to eat. This is a herring. It's the larger of the 2 fish that we offer our birds. And this is a capelin. It's the smaller one. Our buddy whatever here only eats capelin. And there's a certain way she likes to eat them. I don't know what that is, and I've worked with her over 8 years. So if you guys figure that out, let me know. But everybody has a little bit of a different technique. She just tends to be a little bit more picky with her food. So I kind of give her a little sideways fling with the fish. Or I just feed somebody else that isn't hungry. This is the end of the feed. So if you're watching, a lot of our birds did get some food, but they're going to get fed again at about 3:45 today. And all the birds that haven't gotten a chance to eat yet probably will. But I'm actually going to go over to one of our birds, Shim. He's right outside his burrow right there. I'm going to offer him a fish, and then I'll get back on the mic. So all of our birds do have different personalities. The time of the year that we're in right now is their yearly molting time. So penguins go through a yearly catastrophic molt. They have about 70 to 75 feathers per square inch, compared with like 5 or 6 to a cockatoo. So they have really, really thick, dense feathers. So the feather structure itself is what keeps their skin dry in the water. So if you watch our birds, they're going to spend some time taking care of their feathers. That's called preening. They take about 3 hours a day to do that. But when they get closer to their molt, they stop really taking care of their feathers. Anderson capelin. And that's a natural thing because they know their molt is coming. They also have a uropygial gland that secretes oil, and that gland pretty much stops working when it's molt time. Hey, whatever ate a capelin. Make that 2. That's the trick. And so their feathers start to look a little bit separated. In fact, whatever's feathers are kind of separated a little bit like that. And their feathers look really worn, but when you're a Magellanic penguin, you migrate 1,000 to 3,000 miles a year. So it's really important to keep your skin and your feathers, your skin dry, basically. So Shim over here, we got him to eat 1 capelin, which is cool. He'll probably eat more at the last feed. He was right outside of his burrow. There are 9 of those on exhibit. There are nests. They have kennels attached on the other side so our birds can rest in there, eat, do whatever they want. So he tends to eat herring outside of his nest box and capelin inside of his nest box. So he decided that he didn't really want the herring I offered. He didn't really want the capelin. He went in his burrow. He kind of vocalized a little bit at me like, what are you doing? And then I offered him the capelin and he ate it. So he ate a capelin vitamin, but sometimes he eats herring. And I bet you anything that he will eat herring later on today. So by working with these guys consistently for 5 days a week, you get to know them really well, and you get to know their personalities and their behaviors, and that's one of the keys to being able to keep them happy and healthy here at the aquarium. That's a normal thing for Shim to do, but let's say he did that and then he didn't eat food. That's kind of strange. They can go a day or two without eating food and we're not super concerned. We do make a log or a note of it. But if they go any longer than that, we let our vet staff know. And then we usually take them down for an examination. Depending on what's going on, we take blood. Maybe we just take x-rays. But that blood's really going to give us a good picture about what's going on inside the animal. Because, of course, they can't talk to us. But they do have to communicate with each other. So if you listen, these guys are pretty vocal at this time of the year. They do something called braying. They bray to communicate. They bray to let each other know, basically, hey, I'm right here, where are you, or go away. And they do mate for life. So we do have some pairs here at the aquarium. Usually the birds with the burrows are our paired birds. Like Matson up here, his mate is Lily. Lily, I think, is in the water somewhere right now. And if you were here last summer, you might have gotten a chance to see our 3 juvenile penguins. Well, they already went through their yearly molt and now they look like adults. So it's really hard to tell them apart from everybody else. But if you look at the birds that have the best quality feathers, one of them's swimming right in front of the window right now, scratching her head. That's one of our youngsters. So because they go through this catastrophic molt, they have to replace all their feathers once a year. But it's a pretty gnarly process. It can take up to 5 weeks for the parts that we see. It's about a 2 to 3 month process total. Their bodies go through a lot of different changes. They become engorged or swollen with blood. Every feather has a blood vessel attached to it. So that old feather pushes the old feather is pushed out by the new feather that's growing in. So I think we have some signage out there that might talk about the birds going through molt. We don't really have anybody molting right now. We just have birds getting ready to. Anderson capelin. We like to feed our birds 3 times a day here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. They get a morning feed, a middle feed, and then an afternoon feed. And that's usually when we see everybody that hasn't eaten yet eat. Some of our birds really only want to eat in the afternoon. Some of them only want to eat in the morning. So give them options, and they kind of get to pick and choose. They know where the bucket is. They know me. They know my voice. They know that means food's on its way. But honestly, they're not that food motivated. They like to eat, get their calories, whatever, capelin. But if you notice, I'm going to take the bucket away in a minute, and they'll still hang out with us. So they are a social animal that lives in a colony. We happen to have 23 in our colony. If you're interested in getting up close and personal with our penguins, we do offer penguin encounters every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We offer them 3 days a week. Whatever, capelin. And we offer them at 8:30, so you get a chance to hang out with a penguin outside of their enclosure. And Magellanic penguins follow a pretty strict cycle. They're a temperate species of penguin, meaning they aren't going to see ice or snow. They're in the banded penguin family along with the African Humboldt and Galapagos penguin. And the African penguin is a close relative of the Magellanic in that banded penguin family, but there are only about 50,000 of them in their natural habitat. There's a really big problem with them finding sources of food and finding places to nest, but mostly the source of food is diminishing, and that is really harming their population because when they have chicks, it's harder and harder for them to find food. The food goes further and further offshore. These guys are used to hunting for fish and small schooling fish and krill and things like that off of the coast. But that's also where shipping lanes are, so there's some issues with that, oil spills and pollution. But I was lucky enough to get a chance to go to Sand Cobb, and that is a penguin rescue in South Africa. So because I work with our Magellanic penguins, I have some pretty nifty penguin handling skills. So I was able to go down there and help them for 2 weeks. It's the South African Conservation for Coastal Seabirds. So they don't just have penguins, they have all kinds of different animals, or birds. But African penguins are just like Magellanics, but there's only one band on them instead of two. And unfortunately, they are endangered where Magellanic penguins are near threatened. But it was really amazing to be able to be around so many individuals that are so passionate and care so much about animals that it was really inspiring for me. And I actually got to participate in a release, of 12 African penguins back to their natural habitat. Oh, she ate that one. Sometimes the eggs are abandoned, but when they go through that yearly molt, they can't feed their chick because they have to stay on land. So unfortunately, there were some chicks out there that had to be rescued. Sand Cobb gets them ready to go back to their natural habitat and re-releases them. It's a little bit different here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. Most of these animals were born or hatched in a protected environment, so they're not able to go back out, but they are ambassadors for their species. So by getting you guys inspired and seeing how cute they are, we hope that you'll tell people about how awesome penguins are and help protect them in their environment. Looks like we have some birds doing some preening sessions in the water right now. They kind of scratch their head a little bit. They can also trap air in between their feathers. So they have about 70 to 75 feathers per square inch. And then they can kind of dive down, and it's going to help them with buoyancy, and it's also going to give them little bursts of speed. So they do continuously kind of almost trap air in between their feathers. But skin stays completely dry. So believe it or not, there are a few birds that have not eaten today. So at that last feed today, hopefully we'll get those guys. They're getting restaurant quality herring and capelin. Wally just got a capelin. Paddles just got a herring. And we do record every fish they eat because it's very important to keep track of what's going on. Anderson capelin. This time of year, their diet is slowly starting to increase. Wally capelin. Paddles herring. They eat about 3 to 6 herring a day and about 10 to 15 capelin a day. Paddles herring. But when they're getting ready to bulk up for molt, they can eat almost half of their body weight in a day. So we have to really be prepared to give these birds extra nutrients if they need them. Because when you have about 70 to 75 feathers per square inch, it takes a whole lot of energy to regrow those feathers. And all penguin species go through a yearly catastrophic molt, so they kind of know that they're not feeling so great, but it's to help their feathers. So for us, at that time of the year, those are the times of the year where we always keep a close eye on the birds, but certain birds either decide to stop eating, act a little bit different, and that's normal for them, but we still let the vet staff know. Sometimes we do have to give these guys a little bit of extra fluids if they're not eating, but that's not too often. We like to do preventative health care with our animals. So they get yearly physicals. We take a couple penguins a day to our vet office, and they get checked out. They look at their feet, they look in their eyes, they look in their mouth. Sometimes we do x-rays, sometimes we take blood, and they get a West Nile virus vaccine. All of our animals here at the aquarium, for the most part, get yearly physicals. Patsy herring bite. And she's going to drop that. Oh, maybe not. Another herring for Patsy. And that's just the way Patsy eats. She likes to kind of gently hold onto the fish and slowly swallow it. The gull did not win this time. But sometimes what she likes to do is actually drop her fish. And that means she's just not that hungry. That's just a normal thing that she does. Sometimes she actually likes to eat in the water. It's really a gift to be able to work with these birds. So I like to spend as much time kind of trying to get to know every individual and the different things that they like or don't like. And we do participate in an SSP, or species survival plan. So genetically, we want a nice variety of our birds. We don't want them to be related to one another if they're going to mate. Now, we can't always choose who pairs up with who, so sometimes we do trade them to other facilities because the genetics might be better, or they might have just a better location for them. We have traded a few of our birds to other facilities. But since we're a part of AZA, or Association of Zoos and Aquariums, we have certain standards that we have to adhere to. So for example, we have to make sure every penguin has enough space. We have to make sure their diet is correct, they're getting nutrients, like they get their vitamins. They have enrichment, something that stimulates them mentally, physically, or helps with animal health care. All right, so it looks like Robbie here is trapping air in between his feathers, and usually after this they get the zoomies, so you might start to see some porpoising, but of course, because I said that, he's now nice and calm. Robbie is one of our Brazilian rescue birds. So Robbie, Roxy, Kate, and Avery were all stranded pretty far north in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And we were able to give them a home, and that's why we have a colony of penguins here at the aquarium, because we had a permit to be able to rescue those four. They were deemed unreleasable, so if they could go back to their natural habitat, they would have, but they have different ailments and reasons why they are prevented from going back out into their natural habitat. Roxy has some chronic issues with one of her feet, so she has a little bit of a limp. Her quality of life is good. We took her to a animal hospital and got a 3D rendering or imaging of her foot. Whatever, got another capelin. The reason we did that is we wanted to see what part of her foot was having issues, and because she had an issue called bumblefoot, it kind of caused her to have almost like arthritis in her foot. It kind of took out little chunks of that calcium. So as a result of that, she got a bone spur, and that can be pretty painful. So we were able to remove the bone spur, and now she has a chronic limp, but it doesn't hurt her. That's just the way that she walks based on the bumblefoot issues that she has had. And she's actually had 7 out of the 13 chicks here at the aquarium. Her mate is Floyd. He's the guy with his feet in the water right there. He's getting pretty close to molting, so that's kind of why he's choosing to keep his feet cool. The way they do that is that's one of the only places they can release heat. It's by their feet and by their face. YOLO herring. When they start to spit the fish back at me, we usually know that feeding time is over. So a common misconception about penguins is that every penguin species lives in ice or snow. And that's actually not true. There are 18 species of penguin, and there are really only 3 that are ice or snow dependent. So if you think of March of the Penguins, the Emperor penguin, the Adelie penguin, those guys are both ice or snow dependent penguins. But a lot of them are more temperate species, and they live in all kinds of different places in the southern hemisphere. Only really find them in the southern hemisphere. So that whole polar bears and penguin thing doesn't really happen. So our climate's comfortable for our penguins here at the aquarium. It's one of the more common questions we get. And we also get a lot of questions about the birds. Everybody is a little bit different. Some of our birds are more sweet. Some of them are a little bit more demanding. Some can be divas. Some can be really mellow. Some try to stay out of drama, where some are all about it. Just kind of like some people that you might know. So by being able to watch these guys, we kind of know what their normal behaviors are and what they aren't. By spending years with these guys, I've slowly kind of figured out how they like to eat. A lot of people say they're picky. They're not really picky. They just like to prefer their food certain ways, just like you and I do. So some of our birds, you kind of have to fling the food or toss it to them. Some of them will nicely, gently take it from you. And it's kind of a matter of learning the birds. So once you learn them and what they want to do, it's pretty fun to work with them. We have 9 holes or burrows, and those are all occupied by pairs. So because of that, it's kind of easy to see who hangs out where. We do have forms of identification on these guys. They have cable bands with colored beads, and that kind of lets you know who's who. But when you work with them like I do, you start to recognize by their face and their behavior. Everybody does have individual dots or spots, and their feet are a little bit different too. All right, well, thank you guys so much for hanging out at our June Keys penguin habitat. I'm going to go ahead and give these guys a little bit of a break, and we'll be back out here at about 3:45 to give them more food. Thank you guys so much for supporting the Aquarium of the Pacific. We're a nonprofit institution, so our paid admission is going right back to these animals, whether it's to give them the food, health care, or pretty much anything that they need. Thank you guys so much, and enjoy the rest of your day here.